Welcome back to another edition of Postmedia's Ottawa Senators panel. I'm Ken Warren with Bruce Garriock and special guest this week, Terry Marcotte, longtime CTV Ottawa sports guy. Glad to have you aboard, Terry.
Thanks for having me.
So we're here to talk, obviously, about the Senators, and maybe we'll get into a potential Christmas gift for the hockey fan in your life a little bit later on. I guess we should begin with the topic of the day, I guess, is the Ottawa Senators and the roller coaster ride of the past week. We're talking before the game against the Dallas Stars on Thursday. Bruce, great, fantastic weekend for the Senators. Couple of real signature victories, and it looked like maybe they turned a corner, and then they turn around and lay an egg against the Los Angeles Kings. Where do we start with this team?
Well, I think that's the issue for this team is the tremendous inconsistency we've seen, and we had seen some consistency with them winning 4 or 5 games, but I think one of the things they need to do, Terry, and I think this happens with young teams, is they need to be able to handle the highs the same way they handle the lows. And I think when you have a young team that wins 4 or 5, it's like when you play golf. If I start out the first 4 or 5 holes 1 or 2 over par, I think I've got the game solved. And I kind of feel like, Terry, that they went into that game against the LA Kings thinking, you know what, we're world beaters. We've got this solved. We just need to show up. And obviously they found out fairly quickly in that game, being down 4-1 after the first period, that showing up just isn't good enough. And they have got to be better.
This team, I think, is where it probably deserves to be. And I know it's been a bit of a roller coaster getting there. And, they started out pretty well and then they hit a funk and, we're seeing it again. But I think this team, you've got a very young team. And I think young teams need really strong leadership. And Brady Tkachuk, I think, has done a really good job of setting a tone in the, publicly, owning up to a lot of the mistakes of the team, taking a lot on himself. I've been really impressed with his leadership, but it's a very young team, and Claude Giroux, I think, was a great addition, but they just don't have that depth of guys, and they don't have to be star players, but guys who have been there, have done it, have experienced that. Those calming guys, like maybe like a Chris Phillips used to be, somebody who can kind of set a tone and keep things right. And I don't see that on that team.
Guys, I look at this in the last, I guess, 2 weeks. You talked about the 4 or 5 winning, Bruce, and both Cam Talbot and Anton Forsberg were pretty solid during that stretch. And we could talk about the big victory against the Rangers, but in that game, Cam Talbot was really strong. He stopped Mika Zibanejad on a breakaway in overtime. They turn around and score the winning goal. The next night, in San Jose, that big win, Anton Forsberg was outstanding, on that 5-on-3 in the third period to keep that game. And then, again, against LA, Cam Talbot's just not there. And I think for an average team or even a below average team to stay in those games, you've got to have steady goaltending. And I'm not throwing at everything on the goalies, but with the defense that Ottawa has, and maybe we'll get into that here, when you have an injury or two, you need a Band-Aid to cover over those losses. So I guess one thing, what can you do about the goaltending tandem, which is supposed to be a strength? And two, Bruce, like you're on top of this with the defense. Where's the solution here with Artem Zub out?
Yeah, I mean the loss of Artem Zub is huge for this team, and I think that one of the things this team talked about all summer, guys, is the fact that they needed a top four defenseman. They didn't go out and get one. They thought that perhaps they could make do with what they had, and that in fact the answer could come in from within from Jake Sanderson. And quite frankly, Jake Sanderson has been outstanding on this blue line, and we've talked about him a lot. But I look at this situation and say, what they need to me is in it. I think you kind of described it, Terry, when you mentioned Chris Phillips. You need that big sort of shutdown defenseman who is just going to eat up some minutes and beyond the ice. when you're trying to shut down big lines. I didn't feel like on Tuesday certainly, and we keep harping on that game, but it also happened against the Rangers too. They had any answer for the LA Kings' better offensive players.
When people start pointing fingers and what's wrong with this team, I think it goes right through the whole organization. I think Pierre Dorion has made some mistakes, not getting a defenseman. I just, I think there are problems with the way this team is constructed. I think the team needs to play more with more structure, and I think that would fall into coaching. And I think a lot falls on the players. I mean, it is a young team, but some of these guys have been together for a few years, and there's talent. There's obviously talent on this team. You keep on waiting for that next step, and you'll see glimpses of it, but you don't see it consistently. And somewhere along the way, the players have to shoulder some of the responsibility to say, okay, why are we not making that next move? And I think it goes right through the whole team and right through the whole organization. I mean, it has not been a good team for a number of years. So people expecting, well, this is going to be a world beater. No, it's not going to happen. But there are many problems on this team that all through the team, and I still think they've got a long way to go to be a true playoff team.
So I'll throw this out there. It's pretty desperate if they're going to hope to even challenge for a playoff spot. And internally is Bernard Docker's injured and Lassie Thompson maybe not quite ready for this stage. I'll throw it out to you, Bruce. Do you make a bold move? I know there are not very many defensemen out there. Do you make the bold move now and go and get one of those guys?
Well, I mean, the guy to go get would be Jacob Chicken, right? I mean, that's kind of the elephant in the room we're not mentioning. I mean, look, you look at the start that Jacob Chikrin has had. I looked Monday, Ken, and he had 6 points in his first 7 games, and I don't think that's doing anything to hurt his value. Let's put it that way. One of the things that Pierre Dorion is reticent about, and this team is going through an ownership change, and who knows what that's going to mean for his future and the future of Coach DJ Smith. But I know that when I've spoken to Pierre Dorion about this, he doesn't want to go 3 years without a first round draft pick. And let's not forget that he traded his first round pick this year for Alex Brinkat, which was a swing for the fences too. So one thing that Pierre Dorion is he's a scout first and foremost. I think you could always lottery protect that first round pick, and push it back because of the position that they're in. But yeah, I mean, look, the way Chikrin has started, would he help them? Absolutely. And he's got a fairly reasonable cap hit for the next 3 years.
I think you hit a good point there, Bruce. I think right now this is a tweener kind of team. I mean, it's not clear. It may have been clear or maybe just wishful thinking at the beginning of the year that they were ready to take that next step. But are they? I don't know. And have they stockpiled enough talent? You look at what they have in Binghamton. I mean, this is not an organization rich in players just busting to get into the NHL. I mean, if they had that, they wouldn't be so worried about finding a top 4 defenseman. They would have the assets to trade. I mean, pretty well what we're seeing with this organization, except for a few players, but pretty well we're seeing on the NHL roster right now. And is there the depth to be it? I don't think so.
Well,
okay, so you're talking about Christmas wishes.
Sorry, go ahead.
You're talking about Christmas wishes for the Senators there, Terry. There might be a gift on the list there for some people, maybe. To switch gears here, because since you've been retired from active sports duty in CTV Ottawa, you haven't been idle. I've seen you at the curling rink, but also you've been behind the keyboard. Maybe you can tell us about the project.
All right, here it is right here. Hockey Mom's the Heart of the Game. It's a book I co-wrote with a woman named Teresa Bailey. And Teresa set up a network of hockey moms. When she was a young mother trying to guide her kids through minor hockey, she set up a network and she's got like 40,000 moms connected. And she kept on saying to me, there's a book in here. Like, the moms have great stories. So when I stepped away from TV, I reached out to her and said, "You want to work on it together?" And we did. And we've interviewed NHL moms, Brady Kachuk's mom, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, some of the big stars. And we've also talked to moms of the kids who they put in the same amount of work and they didn't make it. And it is gut wrenching when you think of all the hope, all the dreams, all the effort to get a kid to the highest level and not make it. So the book came out in October. It's been on the national bestsellers list since day one, which is terrific. But it tells me that there's an audience there to hear the voices of women in hockey at a time when people are looking at Hockey Canada, run by a bunch of men pretty much, and making the mistakes that we've seen. I mean, it is refreshing to hear women who love the game just as much as men, but never have their voices heard. So the stories are terrific. Moms in the book have been terrific.
Can you just give us one, before we go here, Terry, just one small glimpse of a good story that you like to highlight about this book? Because I know you've done lots of media interviews.
Well, I mean, there are so many. There are, but I'll give you one. Lawson Krause plays for Arizona.
Yeah,
they do a mom's trip, and talking to his mom, and she said we go out for dinner with the boys, and we end up at a dance bar, and one of the boys says, "Can you play Madonna 80s dance music so our moms can get up and dance?" And they're up dancing with their sons, and she says a slow song comes on. So she said if they were young, imagine how awkward it would have been. But they're young men, they're confident in where they are in life, and they took their mothers and they slow dance. And she said, when I'm having a crappy day, that's the memory I reach down to. And I remember that moment, slow dancing with my son. And she said it's just a beautiful moment. And she said, then we're walking off the dance floor, and all these young girls are looking, going, what the hell's going on?
It's a great story. I know this week the Senators announced that next year they're going to have a hockey moms trip for the mothers of the Senators players. So, obviously there's a lot more attention, and as there should be, towards the women in the game. So thank you very much, Terry, for coming on and helping us out with the Sens panel. Thanks, Bruce. And we'll see you next time on the Senators panel. Thank you.
Nice catching up.